Hey guys, welcome back. Okay, so I've had upon popular demand testing the Sirio Performer 5000 antenna. I wasn't really familiar with this antenna. I guess it's a new antenna out. There's the Stryker and the Wilson 1000, Wilson 5000. There's the Sirio Performer 5000 is pretty. I guess it's a pretty popular antenna, and it's a little bigger. It's about a foot longer than the Wilson and the Stryker, but still much smaller than the quarter wave. But when it comes to performance, I was really surprised on how well it did. And thank you, Barracuda 176, for letting me borrow your antenna. He said, "Here, take it and test it out," so we could see how it does compared to these other antennas. So I was really shocked on how well it did, actually. I figured it's smaller. The quarter wave whip's about 9 feet long, quarter wave. And the Wilson 1000, Wilson 5000, and Stryker SR-A10 are around 5.5 feet, the whip. The Sirio is around 6.5 feet. It's a little shorter, about 10 inches longer. So I figured a little less, base load, a little more whip. It's going to do a little better. My prediction was it'll do a little better than the Wilson and Stryker, but not as good as the quarter wave. But when I tested on the roof of a sedan test, I was shocked. It actually did the same, or very, very, very close, enough to where you couldn't tell a difference. So that's saying a lot for the Sirio, because I mean, if you even come close to a quarter wave whip, you're doing pretty damn good. I don't think anything in any of my tests in the future, I don't think I'll ever get an antenna that'll really beat the quarter wave whip. I mean, the law of physics. I mean, it would have to be physically longer, bigger than the quarter wave whip, right, to be better, to perform better. And in a mobile scenario, you're not going to really ever have that. So now here's the thing: this was on the roof of a car, right? So I thought, okay, well, let's do another test. So this, you can see here, the difference between, from S9 to S9 plus around 4.5 dB. Now, on the Icon 7100, I did the math. Each little light bar that's in the red from above S9 to plus 20, there's 13 of them. So each one's worth about 1.5 dB. So that's where I get it's 3 bars past S9. That's where the 4.5 dB comes from. So the signal test for the trunk. Okay, now I did another test. This was the roof. So we're going to the next one, which is the test on the trunk of the car. All right, so this is interesting to me. So, okay, so on the trunk, it's a little different because when I did the test on the trunk with the Wilson and the Stryker, that was a mag mount, where the quarter wave whip and the Sirio were permanent mount. So just to be fair, maybe the Wilson Stryker, that had a little disadvantage by being a mag mount. So although it says S9 here, maybe it's S9 plus 3 or something. I don't know, but it definitely, the Sirio, we already know it outperforms those. But I was interested to see, the difference. So it's really the quarter wave whip. And also I was surprised to see, I knew the being in the trunk would actually improve the signal, possibly in the direction you're pointed. So this is, of course, the car's pointed at the receiving station. And when I do my tests, we're talking like about 10 miles away, on a Icon 7100 on a hill. So that's like a remote station. So the quarter wave whip did really good. And I guess, when you look at it, it's the least obstructed by the roof of the vehicle and the back window and everything. When you have the antenna, mine's mounted, I have a permanent mount right in the middle of the trunk. So, it's about, 6 inches away, maybe a foot away from the glass, the window, the back window. So the quarter wave whip did really, really good. I mean, I gained, 4.5 dB by putting it on the trunk instead of the roof. So that's quite a bit. Now, I did a shootout a long, long time ago in a similar car, and when I did all this, I did a bunch of signal tests to get the maximum forward signal I could possibly get, and I found that in the car, I did the best. The signal wasn't the best on the trunk. Even though it was slightly obstructed by the back window, it still did much better, and I actually won the 4-pill shootout. It wasn't, to be fair, it wasn't like I had these, like, you know, it wasn't like tons and tons of cars, or they weren't like full-on crazy volted up stuff. It was just, you know, a couple guys, you know, like, I don't know, 4 or 5 different vehicles, but I still won the shootout, so that's cool. But so if you're trying to get max signal in one direction, you know, I think the trunk might be your best bet. But you'll see I did more testing. I thought, okay, let's test this with, you know, where the vehicle has different locations, you know, different spots for the antenna to be located on the vehicle. What about that? So I actually did some testing on that too. So it'll be interesting. You'll see the results. So anyway, back to this. The Sirio Performer did S9 plus 6 dB. So we got a 1.5 dB improvement. I saw more of an improvement on the quarter wave whip. It was a 3 dB improvement, or actually 4.5 dB improvement versus only a maybe a 1.5 dB. And I think the reason is because the Sirio Performer is more obstructed by the back window than the quarter wave whip would be. That's my theory. So here, I'm going to go to the next slide here. You'll see quarter wave whip versus Sirio. There's a 3 dB difference. So of course there's going to be a little bit of a difference. We know the quarter wave always wins, but how much are you losing? How much are you giving up by having a much more practical antenna? You know, that's 2.5 feet shorter. Instead of 9 feet, it's only 6 feet, 6.5 feet. So it's much more practical. And you know, so I think the Sirio is a really good performing antenna. So I think it's probably the last of the compromise between a quarter wave whip. In other words, you want a little more performance and still be somewhat practical. Now you are getting kind of big. It's 6.5 feet. It's getting a little bit big. The base of the whip is getting a little thicker, and also the base load is more. It's longer, and you know, if you look at it, it's a little longer instead of like nice and like compact like the Wilson is, or even the Stryker is a little, you know, more compacted and lower. This might be a little more, create a little more wind, you know, resistance, because it's the base of it's longer and skinnier and higher. Actually, when you get the Sirio, it comes with a 6-inch mag mount instead of the 5-inch mag mount you see with those other antennas. So maybe that's why, you know, it's got a little bit bigger magnet to handle the additional wind load. So see the difference there. And then, okay, going to this one, these are kind of just variations of the same test. I'm just showing in different ways. This you'd have to see on a computer, definitely on a phone. You're not going to be able to see this. It's really small. But you see quarter wave whip with the trunk versus roof. And then Sirio 5000 roof versus trunk. So you see the difference. 4.5 dB, 1.5 dB. So I thought, okay, and then here, keep going here. Which is interesting. I thought, okay, let's just try the Sirio, you know, different parts of the vehicle. So I put it on the hood. Now remember, the hood is the opposite side of the vehicle, opposite the direction of the receiving station, because I didn't move the car, I just moved the antenna. So now the ground is opposite. It's basically, it's like as if you turn the car around, and it's just, you can see the signal drop was significant. It dropped down to about S8.5. So we're talking, what's that, 10 dB plus that you're losing by having the antenna in, you know. So as much as we see the improvement and it looks impressive is to have the antenna on the trunk, you're also losing signal in the opposite direction. And unless you're in a shootout, or let's say you're pointed on a hill and you're wanting to talk to the East Coast, or let's say like us here in California, we want to talk to Hawaii, you know, we could be on the West Coast and point west in our car. But if you're just driving around, it seems like you're still better off just having the antenna in the center of the vehicle, because you never know which direction you'll be going, right? Well, so I figured I'll do that test. I did this. So this is, if you subscribe to my channel, this slide right here is, well, you probably, and thank you for subscribing. This slide right here is probably the main reason, or you'll be happy you subscribed maybe. You've seen this, you know, we know there's signal loss, and, you know, but here I did the test, and this is the differences I've seen with the antenna on the roof. It's pretty symmetrical. You can see here the minimum and maximum signal, the delta, the difference is 3 dB, which isn't really that bad. I mean, And interesting, directly going forward wasn't the maximum signal. I had maximum signal mostly to the sides of me, but again, not that much. You know, difference 4.5 to 7.5, you know, that's about a 3 dB difference. That's not that much. That's like a half an S unit variation. That's not too bad. I'd be pretty, you know, I'm pretty happy with this, but look at the results. Very interesting. So, and here's the thing. I did one with the antenna on the trunk, and here's the variation. So remember, in this slide, the difference is 3 dB. Here's when you have the antenna on the trunk. Notice the peak signal is more impressive going, and it is very directional, meaning directly going forward in the vehicle is really where it becomes, you know, the direction. So like in a shootout or something where you want to point like to a direction, you're talking all the time, you're parked, yeah, maybe you want to do this, but look at the variation. I saw a delta of like 10 or even up to 11 dB difference. That's like 2 S units. That's exactly what I was noticing when I was driving and when I did the test here. So we got variations where the signal goes up to S9 plus 9 dB. Now, when I did this test compared to the previous stuff, I think I was running a little more power here, so that's why the signal looks a little stronger overall compared to the original very first tests. But overall, see, I mean, I had S9 plus 9 dB, and then as low as S8 and about 3/4. So that's like about a 10 dB, 11 dB difference. So that sucks. You can see towards the sides, you know, it varies quite a bit. So I, at the end of the day, say, you know, this is the way to go. Put it in the vehicle. This is another reason why you never want to put your antenna like on the bumper of a pickup truck or on the quarter panel in the back section of a, let's say, a SUV or something, you know, like a Jeep, people, or a Bronco. You see people used to bolt them to the sides of like the quarter panel. You know, aside from the signal being blocked, I mean, this is assuming on the trunk, which is even better than if the antenna was on a quarter panel, because the quarter panel, you got metal right up against, you know, along the, you know, the radiation of the antenna, where on a quarter wave, I mean, on the even like on a quarter wave whip. So, but like on the trunk lip, you're not really blocked as much, and it's still performing really bad here as far as being too directional and too much of signal variance. So, well, that's my conclusion of today's video. Hope you guys like the video. Subscribe. Take care.